But hello. Thanksgiving is right around the corner, or is it? Why do we just skip from Halloween to Christmas? What is Thanksgiving? Why is giving thanks dying in our culture? How should Christians give thanks, and what do we give thanks for? You probably aren't opposed to giving thanks, but do we sometimes feel guilty for enjoying good food on Thanksgiving, or reading an enjoyable book, or playing ultimate frisbee after work? Basically, should Christians enjoy the things of this earth? We will be exploring all of these questions in this episode of True Cult. Okay, well, I think we should begin. So Thanksgiving is coming up, or Turkey Day, as lots of people like to call it.
Bite your tongue.
Yeah, bite my tongue. No, don't, please
Get out
don't.
of my house.
I just, Thanksgiving is not done anymore. And maybe clarify, we all do Thanksgiving. We all love Thanksgiving.
We get together as families.
Yeah.
And have a big old party.
Right. But there are so many people that just don't do it. We've all seen just the movies on Thanksgiving, and it's just kind of like the saddest scene in any of the movies. Except for maybe while you were sleeping. I think that's about it.
It's the one time of year the whole family gets together just to fight.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So why has it turned from Thanksgiving to Turkey Day to no one celebrating Thanksgiving, and maybe even more clearly, what is giving thanks?
So just to clarify, so you're saying, because like you say, we all do Thanksgiving. I bet everybody who's listening to the podcast does Thanksgiving too. But you mean like, why has it disappeared? Halloween's a huge thing. Christmas stuff's up.
Jumping from Halloween straight to Christmas.
Everybody's forgotten that there's a major holiday.
Thanksgiving just as Black Friday deals, which maybe those are things to give thanks over. But
I have never done Black Friday one day in my entire life. I never will.
Although I think I've ordered something off Amazon during that time, and it's
that's true.
I've been curious to go to a mall just to watch it.
Just pull up a chair, open it up, sit there. And
bulletproof vest, ready to go. Tourniquets in hand.
Pick up a bag of chips that got thrown on the ground and just
invite all your friends and be part of a stampede.
Not that there's anything wrong with getting good deals, but I get what you're saying. So your question is, why has Thanksgiving
turned into Turkey Day, and why is there no more giving thanks? Because that's
an awesome question.
That's what it means, right? And so what is giving thanks? That's too broad.
That's a great question.
If someone has other smaller questions.
No, well, I mean, we talk about thankfulness, biblically all the time. You have to have an object to be thankful, or you have to have something to be thankful toward, right? And so we, as Christians, we're thankful to our Lord, to God. And I think a lot of people, obviously there's many pagan people in our land, they don't have an object to be thankful to. They don't have something they're looking at to be thankful to. And so they thank themselves by consuming or... Yeah.
Wow. That sums it all up. No, no, I think that's probably 100. That's probably really astute. That the fact that with no object, no person for us to be thankful for anymore, we just have this general abstraction of thanks to what, to whom, to right. Pretty soon, when you deal in general abstractions, things just aren't important anymore. So once upon a time, we were all thankful as a nation to a person. To Jesus for his good gifts, and now we're not, and so it's just not as exciting as
So-
Halloween or Christmas.
So there has been unbelievers as long as the earth has been around. So why does it seem like nowadays there's less Thanksgiving? Because there's always been people celebrating Thanksgiving that haven't been giving thanks to God.
I wonder if there always have been unbelievers, because there's at least pagan man had a deity. Like, now we're atheists. We're the deity.
Which, I mean, my point of view on atheism is that you're essentially making yourself your own god, right? Everything you do is to glorify yourself. Any decision you make is ultimately on your own authority as an atheist, or you think so anyway. So it's so you're kind of seeing yourself as your own god, which it's hard to be thankful to yourself when you realize how terrible we are as humans.
And
it's sinful.
Yeah, in fall Thanksgiving days, I mean, so our American Thanksgiving is actually really late, but that's for different reasons. It's not necessarily a harvest festival. Pretty well every culture, Western culture, Christian culture, has a fall Thanksgiving. It's going to be more in the October harvest period. And they're going to give thanks, to God for bringing the rains, bringing the crops. But you can have atheists and other persons who give thanks to their communities, appreciate those that help bring in the harvest. But we've moved beyond that. We don't have any connection to that physical anymore.
The country as a whole is not an agricultural country.
Yeah, we're post-industrial. It's all technology, so we don't even have that community element anymore. So I think that's part of the passing on as we've moved to a more, atheistic worldview as a society, and much more atomized.
Mm-hmm.
So Thanksgiving.
So we can't even thank each other anymore.
Thanksgiving is a communal thing.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, hadn't
groups
thought of
of
it
people.
in those in that way. I'm curious, like, if there are other ways to give thanks. Like, is it always communal? Because you also talked about, or you just mentioned that they were thanking God for the harvest that they were bringing in, and so could a single person do that?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
I'd say so.
Is it communal in that sense then?
You could, but thinking in Ephesians 5 when Paul says, he says, don't be drunk, but instead be filled with the Holy Spirit. And I always, when I read that passage, I think of the idea when you see a drunk dude walking down the street, like he's staggering and like you can tell he's drunk from a mile away. And he says, but instead be filled with the Spirit. So you should see your spirit-filledness should be writ large. And right after that, he says, you're singing to each other in psalms, hymns, spiritual songs, giving thanks to the Lord. And then just thinking of all those scenes of great Thanksgiving in the Bible. They cross the Red Sea, and Moses sings a song, and Miriam's got her tambourine, and the dance party erupts, and the bringing in of the ark to the temple, to Jerusalem by David. And every time you see great events happening, Goliath slain, like you just see people erupting communally in joy. So if you're truly thankful, I don't know if you could keep it to yourself. Like you'd have to, it would have to bleed over into everybody.
I don't think you need to be in a group setting to be thankful. But I think if you are truly thankful, that will spill into the group settings you're in. And
the best Thanksgivings are going to be communal. It seems like.
Will end up communal. Even if it just starts with one person being thankful.
I've never thought of that. I guess that might sound stupid, but it seems like totally, really interesting. Okay.
I mean, I know when when I'm excited about a new thing in my past, like when I picked up martial arts or when I was into ham radio as a kid or whatever, I think I drove people nuts with I couldn't stop talking about it. When I first started dating, your mother, I know I drove my family nuts because I could not stop talking about her because I couldn't stop thinking about her, right? And maybe Thanksgiving should be like that we can't stop. But I'm still intrigued by your question. Why it's disappearing here? Why it's disappearing? Because, I mean that's a good.
Yeah.
It seems like Glenn was mentioning the Industrial Revolution and maybe things getting more cold or technology, and we don't have those sorts of communities maybe to outpour our Thanksgiving to. Like we don't necessarily have those sorts of close friendships and family members that we can be like, hey, have you heard about this great thing? Or maybe that has something to do with it. Is that where you're kind of going, Glenn? I don't know.
Well,
What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think as part of the whole the idea, thinking over here of the Industrial Revolution thing you're talking about, where or just not necessarily Industrial Revolution, but just as we have progressed mechanically as a culture and scientifically, that everything is getting specialized, every job's getting specialized, and I think our tie to to the harvest time, where we actually are we going to have enough food produced? Are we going to have enough? And then you do, like, oh, that's a big relief that you are definitely thankful for.
Yeah.
I think with our modern day just supermarkets and just the consumerism, culture, where you're just kind of disconnected from that necessity. The necessity of eating, it seems to be always filled in our country, and so you just you don't have this pressing. We need this, or we're not going to make it through the winter. And that not saying that you can't be thankful without that, but it certainly makes it easier to realize that you need to be thankful when you might not make it through a winter.
I mean, economically, things have been really hard lately. I wonder if that's going to reflect in how people celebrate their Thanksgiving. In terms of like, I'm pretty thankful for the election, right? I have this.
If it doesn't let you,
the harvest is maybe coming in, right? So, I definitely have a felt increase in my Thanksgiving since last week for sure, but.
So we're focusing on, we're using, American Thanksgiving as kind of the touchstone for this conversation of Thanksgiving, being able to give thanks. So I'd say, like, as a whole, we're, again, this one season, this one holiday for us is what we're using to kind of waken us up and say, whoa, are we even able to give thanks? Throughout the year, any other time of the year. So historically, many societies have set up days of Thanksgiving, numerous ones throughout the year even. And nowadays, we can't even do one single day. And I think we're trying to change that. We just had a Thanksgiving Day not that long ago as a church body.
Right. A post-election victory party.
Right, yeah. So, yeah, we celebrated the fact that, the better candidate won and the Wicked Witch of the West lost.
Back to the Halloween podcast.
So, as a church, we're able to do that. Yeah, so that's totally new.
We're not. I think we're all feeling, and maybe just to cue in the people listening, that I don't think we're thinking about just Thanksgiving Day as the only day that we can have Thanksgiving on. I think some people might just passively restrict it to that because it's named Thanksgiving Day, and they don't really focus on Thanksgiving the whole rest of the year just on that day. But that should just be one example. It should be
I was thinking this week on Ecclesiastes chapter 3, and kind of off of our little post-election Thanksgiving Day victory celebration,
which was epic,
absolutely epic.
That was
epic,
amazing.
That was one of the best days of the. That was a great day.
It was fantastic, and you were mentioning when we were celebrating that when there are times to rejoice, we need to take those times to rejoice. There's Ecclesiastes 3 talks about there's a time for all things, and goes through an extensive list on when times are and what times are to do what. And if we don't take those times to do those things, when else are we going to do it? And also, it's a tragedy. It's maybe even sinful.
I think it's sinful.
Not to do that when we're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
And when Miriam takes out the tambourine, she's not going to just sit there with a tambourine in hand and sit on the banks of the Nile. Right. She's gonna rejoice, and she's gonna sing with her people.
Yeah.
Part of the huge issue is we don't know the God whose name we bear, right? Like, we are Christians, but the broadly evangelical church, thanks to their milky teaching, they don't know God as the creator and sustainer
That is
Like they lots of people name the name of Christ in America, but they don't, and they want to love him and project good vibes, but they don't know him to the point where they understand he not only created them in their mother's womb, but is in a constant state of sustaining them and speaking them into existence every single day, every single moment. And like when we have a celebration of Thanksgiving, that should be made sweeter by that, because we should be just reminded of that fact, right?
Yeah.
That he's we have so much to be thankful for, because he never stops creating us. Were he to take his hand off for 1 minute, we'd cease to exist.
That's a brilliant
Passive
point.
deism.
It's a brilliant point, because I was sitting here thinking quietly, we're all explaining why atheists don't celebrate Thanksgiving as they ought anymore. But I was sitting here wondering, well, why don't Christians? And I think that's probably exactly it. Christians would like to. They just don't know how, because they don't know. They have just such a shallow view of God. We have such a shallow view of God now. They don't know how to thank him. And he's so abundant and multifaceted, and we don't know enough about him to thank him. We would if we knew more.
Well, and giving thanks can be pretty divisive too, right? If you're able to give thanks for a thing, you're saying that thing is good that you
Right.
got. So the election,
Right.
by talking about Harris or Trump, what are the statistics? Maybe 40% of evangelicals voted for Harris,
I didn't
or
look
something like that.
up.
I think that's around
Yeah,
there.
it could be.
What was this statistic?
I think it's somewhere maybe around 40% of evangelicals voted Harris.
Okay.
I could be totally wet on that,
And
but
and I believe on top of that, I think evangelicals as a demographic, the fewest of them voted as a demographic than ever before. I think in this last election, evangelicals are not voting, and sounds like those who did, 40% went for Harris. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, I think around
Yikes.
there. Yeah, so by doing that, if we're giving thanks, all of a sudden, oh boy, now we got another fight. We
Right.
can't even give thanks to that, as and again, we're using evangelical incredibly
Well,
broad
no,
term.
I mean, from both sides. One of the guys who was here used to go to, I won't name the denomination because we won't pick fights with people, but a conservative reform denomination, and he was just joking, oh man, if you did that in our old denomination, if you had hosted a Trump victory party on a Sunday afternoon, no less, he said you'd be brought up on charges and defrocked, because he was joking, but even on that conservative side, because he was just they're so regulative in that
Jokes
sense.
have a little element of truth in them.
Yeah, totally. So
Interesting.
Wouldn't be
so on
surprised.
the liberal and the ultra conservative side, not.
I think part of the reason why we aren't thankful anymore too is kind of I was reading Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics recently a little bit, and he had a section
Nerd.
on the ancient Egyptians. So
People, we have Cliff Clavin on our panel today.
okay, so
It's pronounced Nicomachean.
okay,
Nico
obviously I'm not
Machian.
Nico Machian. Okay. Anyways, he had a section on pleasure, and he was talking about he brought the thesis that okay, wrong pleasure again.
Yeah, just get to it.
Sometimes someday I'll get to this.
Just gotta
That
power through
pleasure,
the
yeah,
haters.
Forget your train of thought.
says the next interruption. Okay, pleasure is not it's not an end. He's saying pleasure is not something you just do. It's a process, right? And so you're kind of meditating on that a little bit. That pleasure is not something that you do one time, and then it's something that is an ongoing process. And thankfulness, I think, is in that same kind of category, where I think a lot of people think it's time to do something thankful, right? Like Thanksgiving dinner, or you express a thank you card to somebody, a thank you note, or something like that.
Whoa.
But it's not a process where there's an ongoing act building on your thankfulness. It's just a little blip in your timeline.
Here's a thought.
That's fantastic.
Oh, you do your thought first.
I go-
I can remember mine, so do yours.
Yeah.
I can't take credit. I mean, that was
Are you
Aristotle.
saying that I won't be able to remember mine? No, go for it.
No, I already forgot it. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that. Let's see. When we experience creation around us, if we are like looking at creation as a thing that's over there, and we're just like, okay, that thing's beautiful, the birds are singing, the sun is shining, okay, that's creation, and that's beautiful, and then we say to ourselves, okay, now we have to go give thanks. Okay, so now it's a thing to be done, but that's not Thanksgiving. That's not loving, and that's not giving adoration to God.
Now it's time to kiss my wife.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's a chore. That's a duty, and that's not
When you put it
Thanksgiving
that
at
way.
all. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really
And she's really gonna love that kiss too.
Yeah.
Honey.
You got 5 seconds.
Yeah, I've scheduled you in for a kiss.
yeah, that's so clinical and like scientific, and that's. Kind of reminds me of that C.S. Lewis in the tool shed bit, that bit he does, where he's in the tool shed and there's a beam of light coming into the tool shed, and if he's looking at the light, everything is dark, but then he looks into the light and he sees outside, he sees the sun shining, and he sees the trees all around. And that's the difference here. If we're looking at creation, we're not seeing these beautiful things. We're just seeing darkness, and it's all clinical. But if we look through creation, it's like this
See what's behind it
beautiful,
and enjoy it. Glorify God and enjoy Him forever.
Yeah.
So I did remember my thing, and I'm still kind of on Gabriel's jag because I'm trying to noodle this out why Christians aren't that way. You know how like we always have a tendency to throw the baby out with the bathwater? Like we're Reformed people and gradually Protestants got to the place, well, everything that Catholicism did is bad. And we're like, oh, wait a minute. Like, that's our people. That's our history, right? There's a lot of good we need to not forget. We throw the baby out with the bathwater. I wonder if when we see like such a decadent hedonistic society around us, I wonder if Christians feel guilty for seeking and diving into pleasure. And I think we should seek and dive into pleasure, as Christians in a Christian way. I think, I again, that analogy of my wife, I don't when I kiss her, I derive great pleasure from that, and I should. And if I don't, something's wrong, and she's not going to.
So you're
It's not even a real kiss. She won't even want it.
More than just the mental or even the emotional, but something more.
Yeah, I mean,
Actual physical enjoyments.
right. God makes us a spirit and a body, and He gave our body, taste buds and just all kinds of wonderful things. And when He made us, He declared us good, which means He wants all of those things to be used, to glorify Him.
What does it look like for someone to be guilty? Like
Feel guilty about pleasure?
About pleasure. A Christian to feel guilty about pleasure.
I mean, I don't know, what do you guys think?
Because I've seen people like that, and
Yeah.
I feel like I could maybe even go that direction sometimes, where it's like there's been so much trouble with, not to diss the Catholics, but so much trouble with the Catholics and their calendar, and there's been a lot of hypocrisy and a lot of controlling the Christians, where it's not enjoyable, but. So a lot of trouble with tradition. And so sometimes I would be like, okay, I don't know if I want to fully jump into Christmas because it's
Right.
so maybe Catholic year. I don't know. But is that kind of what you're talking about? Or are you talking about like, what else would it look like?
Well, I don't know. I want to be careful if I bring this one up. I don't want to go too far into this trail, but we'll bash on evangelicals again real quick. But
They're the worst.
But I mean, is marriage good? Is it good to
Sucks.
want and
Wait, no. I
think
I like marriage.
every single guy here is married?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's pretty great.
Yeah.
But I mean,
My
we're
wife's
told.
awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, we're
My
told
wife is
that
awesome.
marriage or children, is by a lot of prominent teachers or groups is an idol and something you should flee and get away from, and you should focus on yourself and your spiritual growth and your own journeys. And you should put away and not seek out, a spouse, seek out children, seek out
And some
sex
major
with a wonderful
people
woman.
preach this, and I hate it whenever I hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's an abandonment of the physical, trying to get away from it, and it's sort of a form of Gnosticism, of physical
Totally.
bad.
Yeah. I wanted to land on something you just said there about, the self-centeredness right there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I just popped into my head. I can't remember who said it or when I heard it, but recently heard a great analogy of your point of view in life, and you feel growing up that you are the main character in the story, but I think more pleasure, more joy comes when you realize that you are the secondary characters in your family's stories.
Everybody else's
story, especially like
you're
me
more
now, the
you're
father,
more
my
of a
kids.
side character than a main character.
Yeah, that my daughters now are the main character, and I get to be the side character, and that gets to be really fun. Where it's not self-centered about
good.
you. I was reading John Piper's "Desiring God,"
great
and it's
You should read that, people at home. That's an awesome
Another
book.
subtle flex.
Yeah,
You do a lot of reading, don't you?
the case of
That's an
all of
epic
what's-
book.
Can I get
Go
like a
read it.
whiteboard to keep a counter?
I forgot what I was going to say, but the Case for Christian
Anyways.
Hedonism. It's a great book, but he was making the point of that. Actually, I think he quoted Lewis making the point. So back to Lewis again, that the humblest people praise the most, and the people who are the least content praise the least. And so, if the more humble you are, the more you're going to be able to praise God, and I think the more humble you are, you're going to be able to see other people as the main characters in their story, and you get to assist them on the way. And
Yeah.
I think, that helps with the whole process of being thankful instead of thinking. Like it's almost the more I think about this, the less I like saying there's things to be thankful for. It's like
Exactly.
okay, well, no, I think you should be thankful about things. I
Yeah.
don't think there should be things you should be thankful for because I'm not going to be thankful for my flat tire.
Yeah.
Maybe that created an opportunity to talk to somebody. Maybe that just gave me a time to cool down about something else. Like you should be
Should
thankful
we
about something in that situation.
Read another book.
Thankful for our sufferings.
Right. Wait for AAA or read another book.
Yeah.
What was that?
I mean, should we be thankful for our sufferings? Is it just the,
Bible
good
seems
things?
to say so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one's
James
much.
kind of lands on
that's
that
our,
part.
our
say about
standard. Yeah, by what standard do we judge what we should be thankful for?
Those ones tend to be a little bit more clinical for me.
Yeah.
Okay. There's this thing, and I'm supposed to be thankful. Okay. Thank you, Lord.
Yeah.
But
What was it?
Back to your question about the guilty pleasure, like
Yeah.
you were talking about a minute
Right.
ago. Just going off of what you're saying about hedonism there. There's like a paradox that traditional hedonism has, and we all know this. When you seek a pleasure, it gradually there's a diminishing return to it. And so, like, if you're a hedonist, then you have to seek a deeper pleasure. And anytime a pleasure is self-centered, you're always going to have to get more of it or the next high. And that's why people progress from, like, in a gateway drug to, like, a total life destroyer.
Unless your pleasure is rooted in the eternal.
Yeah, so that would be anytime you're feeling guilty about a pleasure as a Christian, you should analyze, well, is that because it is like a self-centered thing? As a pastor, if I'm counseling a young man who has trouble with masturbation, like, why is that a problem? Well, it's not that sexual pleasure is a problem, but it's that it's entirely self-focused. And when he gets married someday, it's going to be all about his pleasure, as opposed to, like, you have a very successful sexual ethic in a marriage if your thought is, first and foremost, I'm going to bring pleasing joy to my spouse, and then I'll worry about myself afterwards, right? And that kid who's been doing porn and masturbating or whatever, like he's really going to have trouble when he gets married, because all he can think about is, this is about me. And yeah, so, like, but it's what you're saying then, if bringing joy to somebody else. I actually mentioned this you were in the car on the way to Apple Hill the other day. I was kind of musing on the idea of, like, what makes a man, and I think one of the core things is being a purveyor of goodness. Like, I was thinking, I think I actually exist just so I can give good to my wife and my children. Like, and that's probably fundamentally what it should be to be a man. I'm there to protect them. I'm there to set up a world where my wife can be civilization and she can give life to children and then joys and pleasures to the children. I think that's actually the main reason. And by doing that, I said the main reason is glorifying God, but I glorify God by being a giver of good and abundance to the world.
So how do you
deal with if there's a pleasure by yourself, there's not anyone else around, and you can't be helping them get more pleasure, and you're by yourself, and all of a sudden,
Right.
out of nowhere, you see the most beautiful sunset. Oh no, what are you gonna do? Right. Like
Take a picture.
Yeah, take a
Right.
picture, post it on Facebook.
Yeah.
But
Who are you giving pleasure to?
And it's okay for your
Okay, so it is okay
Yeah.
to feel.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think it is.
Yeah.
But that's still not shouldn't be a self-centered pleasure of like, this is all about my enjoyment.
Yeah.
Still, that will come back, or should come back, to thankfulness to God for, I'm the only one sitting here enjoying this. Thank you for that. Yeah, like that's amazing.
Right.
And then if
Right.
it really is if Thanksgiving is a process, then you're going to go tell somebody about that. Like, who hasn't seen a sunset by themselves and then gone and told somebody about it?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that's still going to be shared
I
somewhere
have.
else. You have. Okay. Well.
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
kept some sunsets to myself.
Gabriel,
Okay. All right.
telling us right
For
now.
sure,
Thank you
because
for
God gave them to
confessing.
me.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys-
Just me and him and the sunset. and
Right.
I'm keeping it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are moments like
You're
that.
telling us right now, though. So
No.
no.
You just shared it. No.
Yeah.
That's funny.
No, I think it kind of depends on the pleasure. So like when I was talking about, that example of the masturbation, God gives that pleasure for a very specific time and purpose.
Right.
And you can abuse sunsets. You can abuse rafting. Like, I get great pleasure from rafting, so I'm skipping out on church. I'm going rafting today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It suddenly
I-
becomes an evil
Yeah.
I get
when it was
great
so
pleasure
wonderful.
from rafting, so I'm going to leave out the rest of my family so I can go raft by myself
Yeah.
because it's more relaxing.
I
than having
love
the
golfing,
kids.
so bye kids.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, I mean, we're in
Yeah.
football season.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's here
Yeah.
again every year.
Yep.
So, wait, finish it for me.
What's your point?
Yeah.
They don't. I don't follow football.
People
but
skip
they don't
church for
definitely-
football.
I mean,
Okay, yeah.
skipping
I'm
church.
so ready to get it, but
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean skipping church, but then I mean there's more excitement and more Thanksgiving
Over the
around
Super Bowl.
football, Super
Right.
Bowl, the festivities, everyone getting together than there is Thanksgiving or even Christmas.
Yeah.
People are more excited about the camaraderie around their football team getting smoked than actual Christmas.
Yeah.
I don't
Which
think
is coming
I.
up soon.
I don't know
I
if
don't-
I agree with that.
I don't
You
think
don't
I
agree with
have
that?
to.
Yeah, maybe like some people for sure. That's like the highlight of the year is Super Bowl. But you're kind of making a.
I was going to
blanket
say I don't
statement that
know if I have
can't
a problem
agree
with that. That's what I was going to say.
What was that?
I don't know if I have a problem with someone loving
Super Bowl Sunday
football.
more than Christmas?
Not Super Bowl Super Bowl, but
Well, I don't have a problem with that, but the fact that's the bigger thing.
That's taking precedence.
It's an idol. It's the
far
biggest
surpasses
thing.
everything
yeah,
else.
once it's an idol, but someone
Biggest TV event in the world.
someone could have a really good event and they have a really good time fellowshipping with their Christian brothers
Right.
around football.
Right.
And honestly,
Wait,
it could be more enjoyable to them than sitting down and eating a Christmas meal. I find a hard time, but I don't know if it necessarily would have to be idolatrous.
I was
Well,
gonna say,
I-
are we morally obligated to make Christmas the biggest TV event of the year?
No.
Is
I
that
don't,
what you're
I don't
saying?
think that was
Like-
his point.
Okay.
Yeah.
No,
I just wanted to.
I
jump
think
on
his,
it because
I think his point was, and correct me if I'm wrong, that that there's in football culture when a game lands on a Sunday, usually
Yeah.
the football game wins.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's just that priority. Not usually. Like there's a lot of people I know who
Yeah.
follow football who don't do that at all. But
Yeah.
but especially with Super Bowl, seems to take precedence over.
Super Bowl Sunday, churches are decimated. Many churches are decimated from attendance because they're like, we're getting the game party ready.
Yeah, and that's it. Like I've been a part of football celebrations.
one
I'm not a big
Yeah.
sports guy, but I'm there for the camaraderie. There can be a lot of fun, a lot of great times,
It's a blast.
food, everything.
It's a blast.
The parties we have
It's
around
great.
baseball season.
Oh, yeah,
the
no.
World Series.
It's-
But when it's
Sports is a
used
killer. I love
to
it.
totally obliterate the whole landscape of other celebrations, other forms of
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, that's when I do have an issue.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Wait, you just said
Or-
it again though. You just said it again. If football takes the cake instead of like Thanksgiving or Christmas, I don't know if I have a problem with if you have a super solid group of people, Christians all loving the same thing, and it happens to be football. I don't know if Thanksgiving dinner has to be more enjoyed than those things.
Well, I think the football thing would be a day of Thanksgiving,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like I don't know. In
But
my
is-
head, at
is-
least Christmas is a little more important because of just the nature of what is
Yeah, I
being
mean, like,
thankful
Yeah,
for.
Easter-
they're different
Being thankful for
celebrations.
football and being thankful for Christ coming to earth, I feel like that's why it takes precedence to me. But they should both be days of Thanksgiving.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your average football game could be a day of Thanksgiving if you like football.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, there's nothing wrong with liking football. But yeah, I always.
It's not as good as baseball. But
I mean, if you have, like, you're an old couple and you don't have family or something, I don't know, just a hypothetical, and Christmas is, like, obviously you're celebrating a good thing, you're celebrating Christ's birth, but on Super Bowl or, celebrating a sports team, and you've got a whole bunch of friends who do that same thing. And that just happens to be a bigger event than your Christmas. I don't know if there's a
I think what Glenn was getting at, and I would have to.
emphasize the event.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what Glenn's getting at, and I'd fall down on this side too, is that a sign of a mature Christian is rightly ordered priorities. And, the idea of the incarnation, or the idea in Easter of or any Sabbath, any Sunday, you're at church to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus and the exodus out from sin, and you bail on it for a Super Bowl party. That says a lot about where your mind and heart is.
Yeah. Wait, what? Super Bowl isn't as important?
Yeah, right. Super Bowl is more important, and there's goodness in that for sure. But exercise profiteth little. It profiteth, but it doesn't profit as profiteth as much as certain other things. So I mean, and we're all martial artists, and we all do sporty things and whatever. So we're in sports.
He's not
Yeah. Yeah.
martial artist.
He's on his way.
Working on it.
Yeah, working on it. But yeah, he's the kettlebell man.
That's true.
But so you asked something earlier, and maybe this is time to go to it. You were talking about the goodness of God, and that's really. Would we say that's what we're celebrating ultimately in all Thanksgiving? If we're judging something and being a good Thanksgiving or not, are we saying how does this conform to the goodness of God? And is there a way that a Christian then can be a hedonist, but a Christian hedonist?
Well,
There's a great book on that.
Yeah,
That,
which you read.
that could be a touchy word in circles.
I'm
Since
getting
you brought it up,
scored
can you give a
already.
brief definition of hedonism? Because that might not be a well-known term nowadays.
Yeah.
Or it's very
Or
infamously
I
known.
was gonna say, or it's known by a certain
But
idea.
we're about
So-
Pleasure
building
seeking.
culture, and so using words to describe new ideas that we want to bring about.
So
I can handle that
how are you using the term hedonism?
Yeah, I'm going all the way back to, the ancient philosophy. I mean, ultimately, this is probably the most ancient philosophy, where you're seeking pleasure and you're seeking meaning out of physical pleasure. You're seeking meaning in life out of physical pleasure. That's what I'm thinking of, and not that there's not meaning in pleasure, but for a non-Christian hedonist, that is the summum bonum. That is the highest good, is how much pleasure I can rake in before I shuffle off this mortal coil, right? And so I'm tempering that by, I'm not, I mean, it's John Piper.
It's a little bit different than Christian hedonism.
Right.
It would have to be. But I think a quote from John Piper's book, which I've also read.
So that.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. Is God is most glorified when
Way
we
to join the
are
trend.
enjoying Him or satisfied in Him, or satisfied. I can't quite remember the exact quote. Satisfied in Him, I think, is what it says. And the way we do that is find pleasure in the things He's given us. Yeah.
And having read that book, I would say, and I would agree with this, and I would say this and stand on this hill, that the pursuit of pleasure, of God, of pleasure, recognize, the Christian, not kicking out the Christian part, but the pursuit of pleasure is a necessary part of being a good person.
Rightly ordered pleasure.
Rightly ordered pleasure, it is a necessary part of being a good and righteous person. If you're going to glorify God, then you need to enjoy Him forever. It's a necessary part of being a Christian that you need to.
Yeah. Make catechisms great again.
Yeah.
Because
Yes,
because like what's man's chief end? Man's chief end is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever.
Right.
Right? Like that, if that really is your chief end.
Yeah.
And you can't be a scab picking, sin confessing all the time type of
Yeah.
dude. You have to find
Yeah.
You
the
have to
joy
break the
God
fast.
that God
Yeah.
writes into your life, and it's there.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
there's reason to be thankful, even if you're in the Colosseum.
The long-faced, moping late 18th century Puritan in New England, slappity slap, 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 like, I should say early 18th century Puritan. That's bad. Like, that's not Christianity. You can't go around
And killing
Moping.
everyone's
Such
joy.
an incredible change in that group of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Because the original Puritans were awesome.
It's
Yeah.
actually
They would command
gluttony.
Thanksgiving days, physical Thanksgiving days.
Yeah.
In their colonies.
The Puritans are actually being gluttonous, and that not
The
all
late
Puritans, the
Puritans.
late
Late ones,
Puritans,
yeah.
yeah, not okay. Distinction there for people who don't know, but the late Puritans, the one that everybody, when you think Puritan, that comes to your head, they're actually being gluttonous, right? Because gluttony is not just the excess of something; it's not just taking more than your fair share. It's also having it just exactly the way you want it, right? It's because that's a form
Nitpicky.
of nitpickiness is a form of gluttony because it's self-pleasuring, right? This is all about me, and if that steak is medium, not medium rare, I'm sending it back, right? It's too nitpicky, and so those Puritans are actually
Still being ruled by your belly.
yeah, you're still being ruled
Yeah.
by your belly. Now, I mean, it doesn't even have to be a food example, right?
Right,
But
Appetites.
Yeah.
yeah, just your appetite. That's a broader word. That's good.
Yeah.
So Puritans are gluttonous, in my opinion.
So, I mean, yeah.
Late Puritans.
The late Puritans.
Yeah.
Everybody go read the early Puritans. Whole shelf full of it.
Do we want to get into
Good
that?
stuff.
No, I mean, because I keep saying American Thanksgiving because it's unique in its origins. So, do we want to go back into
Really
history a
quick
little bit? Okay, go
on
ahead.
the God giving us good things bit before we get maybe into history. Just a couple really good verses that tie into God wanting us to have good things. So Psalm 34 verse 8, oh, taste and see that the Lord is good.
Yeah.
Psalm 19, I have this written down. Psalm 19, well, this one's a little bit different maybe, but the heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. In the same way that we can taste and see that the Lord is good through his creation, the creation is declaring and glorifying God. Let's see. We are told in Proverbs, well, at least the son is told in Proverbs, my son, eat honey, for it is good, and the drippings of the honeycomb are sweet to your taste. We're told to eat good things, which is part of God's creation. How
about this one?
Yeah.
Psalm 16:11. In your presence is fullness of joy. In your right hand there are pleasures forever. Psalm
Brian
16:11.
Sauvé song. Brian, if you're watching, it's a good song.
And you can come on our podcast if you want, please. That'd be fun.
Your knees just hit the ground right there. Or have bruises on
Can you
them?
sign my copy of the Haunted Cosmos
I'm gonna
book?
throw up.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah.
What were you saying? The Brian Sauvé song?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Just
finish that.
he put that song to music.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that one.
It's good.
Yeah.
Psalm 148, everyone go read it, talking just about how all creation is declaring the glory of God. So, there's just, it's everywhere. So, yeah.
Did we ever really explore what we all think of when we talk about the attribute of the goodness of God? Did we? I remember we talked about that.
I don't
I
think,
don't think so. Not in this room.
So what if that is God has incommunicable attributes that he keeps for himself that makes him separates him from his creatures, and he has communicable attributes, things that he gives to us that he has in infinite measure, but he does give to us in finite measure. And goodness is one of those things. And if we're saying goodness is at the core of Thanksgiving, right? Then how would you guys describe, I'm just seriously throwing it out there. I may have a way that off the top of my head I'd say, but how would you describe the goodness of God? Because I think that's one of his fundamental core attributes is his goodness.
Are you looking for
taste and see the Lord is good.
Yeah, are you looking for a succinct definition of God's goodness? I don't know if I have quite that.
Or just experientially,
but
like
yeah, I have lots of experiences with the goodness of God, and this actually goes good into a question I had. How can we taste and see that the Lord is good through His creation? Are we tasting the Lord when we eat? Are we seeing the Lord? That sounds a little bit mystical,
but it is mystical though.
But it is.
Yeah,
it's a very spiritual thing that we're seeing, and a very God isn't everything that we're seeing, but He's in everything that we're seeing. He's cooked Himself into creation, or created Himself into creation.
Yeah.
So yeah, we actually can. If we eat bacon, we can actually taste that the Lord is good.
We got the chili cook-off and pie contest for the men and women of the church today at the park as we play football. Yeah. And I've been looking forward to this for weeks because I fully intend, and I know it will be realized, we're all going to taste and see that the Lord is good in a really big way today.
Actually taste it.
So what does that mean?
So one part of God's goodness is really good tasting bacon or really good tasting chili. That's part of God's goodness.
One thing to land on is that taste and see the Lord is good is not fully devour and see the Lord is good. It's recognizing that He is a bottomless well, right? That it's a taste, right? And so we're only getting hints of this of His eternality and His perfection through these little vignettes of things that we encounter.
And that's what heaven is because He is bottomless, like you say. We're going to spend, when we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days, to sing His praise than we first begun, because we're never going to plumb the depths of His goodness.
I think probably the maybe experientially, but maybe not. Just His goodness is shown so clearly is He is experiencing this deep fellowship in the Trinity for all eternity. And what He does that is so good is He extends the fellowship to us. And He says, here, experience my goodness through the things around us. Eat this food. I'm going to show you this fellowship and this goodness through what we see around us.
I love it.
I think that's
it's a participation in a way, you're saying, of the Trinity.
Yeah.
Because
we are participating and we're adopted. I mean, that's I was just reading Packer's book, Knowing God, and he's got
another
this
flex.
No,
it's quite a workout this morning, guys.
I just read one chapter.
Lots of flexing.
So no, I'm bad. Anyway, but the chapter is on adoption, and it's extending that fellowship, that sonship, that family fellowship. And one way we can see it is just saying how good God is and eating food. And
I like that. I like how we get to participate in that fellowship of the Trinity when we see that the Lord is good. I do also want to highlight that the Trinity is its own community, right? The Godhead is that eternally sharing community, and wherever two or more gather together, there He will be also. Like we, it's our experience of His goodness is better when we do it with one another.
That comes back to the Thanksgiving is something that has to be. You can be thankful in yourself, but you really need to be sharing it with others,
and ultimately sharing it with God.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
You really won't share it well with others without sharing it first with God.
Yeah.
So when I think of goodness, I'll just throw this was the musings on the Apple Hill thing. Like I was saying, okay, the core of manhood is being abundant and good to your wife and your children and just the world around you. Because when I think of goodness, I think of God He's Yahweh Jireh, right? He is the provider. Was that you were saying at the beginning? Just the idea of God being a provider, and we don't remember this anymore. But He could have just given us, food to eat, and it was efficient and it nourished us. But He didn't. He gave us more than that. He gave us the colors and the textures and the flavors. He gave us taste buds. That's an aspect of His goodness. He didn't have to give us taste buds. He didn't have to make sunsets look like they do or roses smell like they do, right? But He did that because He is all abundance. It's His nature to just pour out abundance and blessing on the world. That's why he created, right? And so like his goodness is just like everything that I think about, I do not deserve. I don't deserve to sit in a room with you guys, which I'm deriving huge pleasure with this. Like it's one of the most enjoyable things I've ever done in my life is this. I'm not joking you. And he didn't have to make conversations stimulating like this. And he didn't have to make sweaters that are warm and fires and, you know, the smell of apple pie. And all of that stuff is just abundance poured out.
Yeah,
and
on top
anytime
of
that I
all-
get selfish, it's not good.
And on top of all of that, he gave his life.
Right. Can you get more abundant?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I remember, I mean, after becoming a Christian, saved into, you know, one of those areas of the evangelical world where it's basically your whole goal is to be impoverished in a variety of ways. And so, you know, it's in this time where, I mean, I would forego friends, you know, fun times, fun things. I even dynamited all of my college grades because my whole goal was, I just got to save people from hell. And so I just
Think about holy things.
Exactly, all holy things. And, you know, if I enjoy this thing, I could be going out to this group and sharing the gospel or something like that. Now, sharing the gospel isn't bad, but it was entirely shunning all these other marvelous things that God put out there, but I didn't recognize them as actually good. And a big part of that is because I didn't know God or his word very well. But over time, God would work in me and change that. And remember, there are numerous times where, you know, we'd be having wonderful, awesome Christian fellowship at our place where I was living with my housemates and whatnot. We have friends, and we'd be singing songs, whatever. And it was great. And there were times where I'd be just in my own room staring at a mirror thinking, wow, I don't deserve this. I don't belong here. And it wasn't that I don't belong here so I shouldn't be here, but I just knew
God's being
where
good.
if it was just
pouring
me, I
goodness
know
on
where
me.
I should, or where I would be.
Yeah.
It wouldn't even be as bad as I can imagine.
Yeah.
And all because of God's goodness, that he would give me friendship, he'd give me good food, a warm house, you know, a college where he gives me money that I can then use to, you know, go and perform works in this world, to be a co-creator with him. It's all totally, absolutely incredible that God gives all these things.
And as soon as you thought about that goodness, I bet you just well of thanksgiving started to pour up in your heart.
It's all the emotions.
Yeah.
Right? It's even, you know, a joyful sadness even, knowing and recognizing just how miserable I am, but at the same time, how great it is to have such a wonderful father.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That I can have all of this. And just the joy you cannot express in words.
Yeah.
I think it's
That's beautiful.
part. You know, we talked about a little bit already that people will feel those moments and be like, I'm guilty for feeling that way, and I hate that. My train of thought just.
Well, I mean, it passed off to me. Like,
Yeah. Go for it.
you go for it.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll
talk
come back to
last,
it. I
so.
had a thought I wanted to go on, but go ahead.
Well, people not wanting to dip their feet into those good things, they're actually going farther away from God.
Yeah.
Because we're dipping a little bit into evidentialism here, but God has shown himself through his goodness, and also maybe that being the ultimate attribute in this setting, or at least in this conversation, but all of the things that we taste and see, they are showing different attributes that God has put into creation so that we might see him and know him better. When we look up at the stars, we know he is a great God. He is a majestic God, and he's able to create those stars. We look around and we just see all these different aspects of God. And when you don't want to dip your toes into that, you're saying, no, I don't want to know God.
And you're almost saying you don't believe. You're saying you don't believe his promises because he says he's going to work all things together for the good of those who are called according to his purposes, right? And when you say, but not for me, right? But you're a Christian. Like, he desires to pour good upon you, and you should enjoy that good and thank him for it. And if you don't, then you're just, well, Jesus, you weren't good enough for me. You weren't strong enough for me. You would never say that in your mouth, but you're acting it like that's what you think. You don't believe his promises.
And I remember my train of thought now. Thank you. That he's not rewarding us with these pleasures. It's not I should say it better. It's not a wage. He's not paying us with these pleasures.
Right.
He is gifting these pleasures to us, right? And so
Makes
that's
it all
one of the
better.
reasons why you shouldn't feel guilty when you feel those. Is that if you were supposed to be paid, if this is your payment, then you are being way overpaid, and you're going to owe a lot back to him, right? But it's not a payment; it's a gift, and so you shouldn't feel that guilty of I got overpaid. He just gave you a massive whopping Christmas bonus that just happens to be bigger than your entire life salary, right? So each time it happens, like it's not a wage.
Yeah, that's a great.
That was my train of thought.
So, could we maybe apply the prodigal son at all?
Make it a truth statement. You do that.
So right, prodigal son. The one son, basically says, "Hey, Pop, I want all my stuff. You're dead to me. I'm going to go off and live my own life." And he does that, and he gets to enjoy all these things. Well, the other son is very, in his own eyes, very dutifully stands by. You could even possibly say somberly, and just does his own tasks, doesn't ask for anything. And at the end, the prodigal son comes back. The father's joyful, big celebration. And then the son that stuck around is very indignant and upset.
Right.
Hey, how come he's getting this big old party and my friends?
Why does he get good?
Yeah. Well, did you ever ask? Did you ever, these things were always here for you. You just had to enjoy them, take them and enjoy them. They were always yours to begin with.
Yeah, that's a good application.
Yeah.
That's an excellent application.
He forgot to enjoy. The other guy, the prodigal son, enjoyed too much.
Yeah, and so people burn out. You hear of Christian stories where the people will shun joy and they get very upset when someone else is joyful and having a great time, and they don't have any right to be upset. It's a good thing that they're being joyful, and it's a bad thing that you're not asking what your father has already said you can have.
Yeah, you've already given us the greatest thing in your son. Ask for more.
Right.
Yeah.
Ask for more blessings.
Ask and you shall receive.
Yeah.
You do not have because you do not ask.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to temper what I just said a second ago. I said he enjoyed it the prodigal son enjoyed too much. He didn't actually enjoy too much.
Right. He wasn't asking.
His enjoyment isn't a scale where it there's a point where it falls off. Right. God even built this into creation where you take that first piece of cake and it's
Right.
It's amazing. You take that second piece of cake because the first one was so good and you're like, that was too much.
Yeah.
And so he built into it to not have excess. So he
Listening
didn't enjoy it too
Paralandra
much.
going through the
I
bubble
was just
trees.
thinking
He
that.
didn't enjoy it because
Listening to the symphony twice in one day. Listening to the symphony twice in one day.
Yeah.
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 So you were mentioning when you were in college, you were just trying to go out and preach the gospel. And the gospel's not a bad thing, but it kind of gets at a question. At least for me, it's hard to juggle knowing how much do I go know God indirectly, maybe to quote Rigney. There's indirect knowing God, which is I think. Creation around us, but then there's kind of this more direct going and reading your Bible and praying and maybe even going and evangelizing. What's the balance? What's the correct? Cause we've been kind of dancing around that question a little bit. When do we say, okay, now I have to go give thanks, or when we pray before a meal, that's kind of a more direct Thanksgiving.
Well, like I said earlier, I think Thanksgiving is a process, so I don't think it's limited to one area. It should be permanent. It should be always. But I think people forget that part of the gospel message is the gift that Christ came and died for our sins. But part of the gospel message also that is less, it's landed on less, is that the kingdom has come, right? And so. Part of that gospel message is to be sharing it with people, and part of that gospel message is to be doing your part in the kingdom. And so, since there's two parts, I think you should balance it.
Yeah.
And I don't think it should be actually this time of day is this one, and this time of day is this one. I am going about my kingdom work in my studio teaching, and I have conversations about the gospel with students and parents all the time. So it's not like this set of time is this hour to this hour is evangelism. This hour to hour is my kingdom work. This hour to hour is me studying my Bible. It should be. I mean, it's not saying you shouldn't budget your time, but it's not like you should limit yourself to evangelism versus.
It shouldn't be a clinical thing. Once again, it should be an outpouring of what you're enjoying.
Yeah, I was going to say by way of analogy, first time I went to Disneyland as a little kid, I loved Disneyland. The first time I took my children to Disneyland, I loved Disneyland way more than when I went myself, right? Just to bring that joy and see that joy in their face and see, all these things. I know what's around the corner and what, yep, they responded just like I thought they would, right? And take that analogy another direction. When I first started playing violin, I hated to practice. I hated my scales, right? I loved performing, and I loved playing with people in quartets and orchestra, and so I would go through the scales to get to the performance sort of a thing. But then as I began to love not the performance, but the violin itself, suddenly I loved practicing. I couldn't wait to get up to play my scales. I just was addicted to it. I'd play 4, 5, 6 hours a day, right? And that's probably, as mature Christians, if we get this chance to lead people to Disneyland, and to see, in a child's eyes, even if they're 50 years old or something, the joy of getting to know the goodness of Jesus, and suddenly the sunset really means something different to them than it ever did, and the food actually tastes sweeter. I'm convinced Christians have better taste buds and better eyes and better ears because there's more pleasure being a Christian. There just is, right? Because it's God directed.
Listen, Christian radio would say otherwise.
Yeah. but just the joy of bringing other people to the great eternal Disneyland. Yeah, I guess that's what we're all saying is that there's just it's not a chore. Everything is Thanksgiving and joy.
Yeah, it's just a natural response when you're around so many great things to shout for joy, right? To be like, okay, let's do it. Let's shout for joy, Adam Hood did
at the party, right? Yeah, at the party, we just all yelled because we're happy.
Yeah, but it was weird.
Yeah, it was. Well,
as far as what's typical,
I don't think it was weird, but it was atypical.
It had to be introduced.
Yeah,
it wasn't weird. Some people felt weird, which made some parts weird.
Uh-huh. Yeah, some people aren't into that extroversion of just shouting for joy.
Yeah.
Right.
But there had to be a preparation. So as a again, we're going back to culture. He had to prepare everyone or get them on the same page. Like, hey, let's just shout. Let's just shout for joy, shout in celebration.
So another physical way we often shout for joy, maybe not actually shouting, but we pray. That's one way we show our thanks or like a physical response to things that we're seeing around us. We pray. But there's a way to love people around us to not be in the pleasure for ourselves, but to give it to other people. And a way not to do it is, okay, before every bite, I've got to say a prayer. So,
right.
Okay, thank you for this bite. Okay, what were you saying? Okay, and then just kind of that's not a way to go about dealing with our thanks and dealing with God. It's a rightly ordered affection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of profound too. You guys are saying all kinds of profound things because that's true.
Not original to me. There's a kind of
just
quote
own it.
from
just own it.
Yeah. I can do that.
No one else read whatever you read.
That idea of the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, right? So that brings us. We're if you're a pagan, you suddenly come into contact with God's law, and He quickens your heart. Like there's a fear that's an immature Christian has. You should always have a fear, of course, but it's there. Mm-hmm. And that progresses often to a duty. Like I'll practice my scales, fine. Mm-hmm. But a mature Christian, that progresses to just a joy and a love, right? It's not a duty. I have to say my prayers today. It's like, I can't wait to say my prayers.
What does that come back to? Hedonism?
I think so.
Right? You're having to do a reprogram. And we're still physical.
Yeah.
And we still, we have minds, we have synapses. And those things have to be totally rewired.
To enjoy your prayer time.
Right.
Yeah.
To enjoy prayer time, to, when you move from your pagan lifestyle to this new life, new heart, new desires, you still have a body that is physical and is tied to this world. You have to put away, you talk about marriage and masturbation and whatnot. You have to put that away, ideally a long time before you begin dating and then marriage.
Yep. Yeah.
So then it's
Yeah.
effectively virgin territory by the time you get married and are with a wife.
Which has come back to then the Thanksgiving. We should make our Thanksgivings really, really big. I think of my grandmother and my mother when I was a little kid, and the celebrations were so epic. I couldn't wait till next year came. I just couldn't wait to see the table my grandmother set, or to see the cornucopia display on the table that my mother would make. I just couldn't wait for it.
Just don't make it about you, that you are the center, that
Right.
that everybody's making this turkey and that gravy and that cherry sauce, that cranberry sauce for me.
Yeah, you'll have a
Right.
diminishing return there of hedonism. You won't enjoy it. But if it's about
There
God,
was an analogy I heard where it's like reading. When you're reading and you have to sound out every word, or you have to recognize every word, that's not actually speaking that language. That's not actually reading. You're decoding. You're like, okay, so this equals this. That's kind of a clinical thing. But when we're experiencing creation, it's not like, okay, birds are there. You're just in it and loving it, and your reaction is going to be, I'm not going to plan out my wanting next year.
Right.
It's just I'm going to want it. I'm
Yeah.
going to want next year and the table. I'm going to want to shout for joy. That'd be pretty funny, but I think a good response every time we see a beautiful sunset, just to be almost surprised by it, like, that's beautiful, right?
Where'd that come from?
Oh, I can't wait for the next one. Like that's just you're
A
just
childlike
Grocery store
wonder.
parking lot.
yeah, you're
We
just
have grown
develop a
experiencing-
childlike
older than our
wonder.
father.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
We've
you're
grown older than our father.
yeah, right.
Yeah, that's a Chesterton
Oh,
quote.
the Chester.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep, growing
grown-
older.
We shouldn't be older than our father in that way.
Yeah.
Meaning, it's a
God
bad
has
version
the
of older.
eternal youth.
Yeah,
Right.
it's the
Of
bad
delight.
version of older where you've gotten bored with you've made things mundane instead of realizing that they're
And that's why Christians have more pleasure.
Yeah.
Because they
We
they sit and
young
they
that way.
look at sunsets, or they look at rocks covered with moss, and
You
they're
see
like,
the God behind it.
Yeah, and you see
And He's infinite. You're never going to get to that bottom of
They
that
still
pleasure.
see that as infinite joy and wonderment.
Yeah.
You know,
Childlike wonder.
sit on the knee of the Father and still be awe.
Yep.
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 Yeah.
Well, that about does it.
I feel good.
Yeah, no, that was a good.
Yeah.
That was
I feel
a really.
thankful.
I'm
I
excited.
feel so thankful. Yeah.
This is going to be a good Thanksgiving. I mean, I'm so thankful for what's happening in the world, in the church, in my family, in my life.
So
I'm thankful to a person.
yeah. So how can we bring this wonderment back? So I'd say 30 years old in a few weeks, something like that. And in that time frame, from a child, I don't think it's childhood wonderment, right? I remember Thanksgiving being much more Thanksgiving, right? It's gone.
Well, we need to model it.
As a culture, it's totally gone now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I
Does
do.
that fit what you've experienced in your own lives?
as a culture.
As a culture,
Yeah.
it's
And-
gone. It's not gone in our family, but it's gone.
It does.
In
We
the
have, to,
culture.
we have to model it, and we have to not live it once a year. Right? I think we need to, instead of modeling it 1 out of 365, we need to model it 365 out of 365. And when that happens, the more you invest, the more your return is. And I think if we invested, almost 400-fold, then
And you guys all do that because, like, when you guys walk into a room, like I'm sitting there, and you guys come in the front door, like you just walk in, but there's like a spirit. The spirit lifts in the room. So, like, you guys are practicing being joyful because you just carry it with you like a smell, and that's what we need to do. We just need to carry it with us. You're saying 365. We got to just carry it with us everywhere we go. Yeah,
As-
the aroma of life.
Yeah, maybe as an exhortation, like don't during Thanksgiving, don't have shouts of fear don't go into Thanksgiving afraid about how much pleasure you're going to feel. Have shouts of thanksgiving, and go into it willing to love the Lord for what you're going to experience. Maybe that's one way, at least I think we could model it, is just we're going in and we're ready to experience the things that God's given us.
Not
afraid of it.
We're like the practical things. Yeah, I mean, Thanksgiving's here. Pretty much, people are going to be gathering. We're talking about it right now. What can people do as they gather together to actually bring new life to their families? Because families are, pretty well broken down, and there's going to a lot of people are getting together ready for a very tense evening around a dead turkey.
Right. That's true.
So, yeah,
Uncle Bob's gonna get drunk and.
Right. We model it. Find opportunities to do thankful things. Thankful. Thank the person for the food they brought. Thank them for things they've done in your life. Remind them to be thankful to God. Be thankful to God publicly. Like all those things. And as far as a very practical, don't be picky. Right?
Yeah.
That's
be merciful.
What a buzzkill if you like. That pie. Well, if you had a little bit more cinnamon in it,
right?
Okay.
Well,
so just don't be picky, and
that's one way to show pickiness is to start saying, "Oh, I didn't really like that." But one way to show thankfulness without saying, "Hey, thanks for the pie," is to, "Wow, that pie was delicious."
Yeah.
Is this corn hand shot?
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. What about Bob?
Yeah.
Actually, so I think what you're getting at, and it's probably a whole nother podcast, is a discussion on traditions. Because, like, the idea of traditions, I think that's how culture does get perpetuated. But without talking about that, something that I think I'd urge everybody who is still celebrating Thanksgiving out there listening to do, look in the community and find lonely people.
Someone who,
invite them in.
Not thinking about yourself.
Right.
Don't just you be thankful. Go find someone who needs to be thankful and help them be thankful.
That's a very biblical thing because, like, Deuteronomy 14, there was, even before that, there's the original tithe that you give to God, but God lays out, you're supposed to, set a large amount of money aside for a giant feast of Thanksgiving. You're supposed to go on a vacation even with this money so you can celebrate with other people. And then every 3 years, you're supposed to set aside money so that each time you had these religious vacations, the poor people could just taste abundance.
Okay. I guess we'll have a feast.
Right. I mean, when we were first married, Tanya and I were so poor. Like, I was in college, and we made like $11,000 a year. I'm not joshing you. Had some other, housing was paid for by the school and such, so we could survive. But $11,000 a year. But I remember telling her in those years of great want, when Thanksgiving came around, I was like, I set aside a bunch of money, as much as I could, like a bunch. But for me, it was a huge portion of our income. And I set it aside, and I told her, woman, spend this. Like, just get good wine and get good food and just spend it. Like, we got to celebrate the Lord.
Yeah.
I like it. Can I read 1 Corinthians 10:31 to
Close it out?
Close it out?
Sure.
So you have that too. Did I steal your last time too? Something? Okay, you too. Hey, it must be on the
whole
mic.
podcast.
It's on there.
You just
So-
look at your papers.
Yeah.
1 Corinthians 10:31. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do all to the glory of God.
Perfect.
Whatever you do.
Amen.
Yep.
Amen to that.
Amen
Whatever
to
you do.
that.
Awesome.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Happy
Bless you all.
Bye.